held remotely and also in person, and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2015. We broadcast and record council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with council public policies available through the council's website. Members of the committee are reminded they should follow council's established meetings protocol, including around the use of chat facility, and the comments made in the chat facility are visible for all participants in the meeting, which may include members to receive and next to the meeting. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. Colin.
Convener, there are no apologies, so we'll move to a roll call. And the following councillors, please indicate if they're present at the meeting. Councillor Armstrong.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Curley.
Present chamber.
Councillor Law.
Present remotely.
Councillor McCabe.
Present chamber.
Councillor McCormick.
Present remotely.
Councillor Maguire.
Present.
Councillor McVeigh.
In chamber.
Councillor Nelson. Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present remotely.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Oh, sorry. Just with respect to the freedom of information paper, agenda item number 10, just to declare for transparency purposes that I requested a freedom of information, made a freedom of information request during the period of this report, but I don't think it will preclude me from participating in the meeting.
Tell us about that after the meeting. Okay, any other declarations of interest? No? Okay, thanks colleagues. Item 2 is the 2024-5 Policy Resources Revenue Budget 23-24 outturn and the General Fund Revenue Budget update. And Angela's going to speak that. Angela?
Thank you, Convener. This is the first report for the 24-25 revenue budget, and as advised at the August committee, we said we'd give a further update report on the 23-24 outturn, so this is included also. Just a couple of points to highlight. The committee is projecting a 400k overspend in the 24-25 revenue budget. This is inclusive of a £250,000 overspend for the pay negotiations that we're expecting. Also, the general fund position is projecting an overspend of 1.192 million. There is a report elsewhere on the agenda which is giving detailed proposals on how to address this recurring pressure. The report also provides updates on the earmarked reserves, the common good and the general fund position, as it always does, and also a lead officer update on the work streams that were approved as part of the 24-25 budget. The committee has just been asked to note the current position and also to approve impairment as detailed in section 3.1 of the report. Happy to try and take any questions.
Okay, thanks Angela. Any questions for colleagues? Public Councillor.
Thanks, Convener. Page 10, note 2, regarding the CMT recommending that we share upstream to cut 29 teacher jobs, maybe say 1.8 million. I know that's subject to the Scottish Government provisions, but the Glasgow city's been rumbling along. I'm just wondering, even yourself, the Chief Executive, have any indication how that's going to go, because if you read between the lines of various newspapers, is that going to be sacrosanct, or do we suspect that may change in future?
Okay. Any officer want to take that, please?
Through yourself, Convener. Ursula have obviously raised an issue through the rights agreement for relation to teachers, and I understand from just off the course of the meeting that it's going to be discussed at the convention later in the week.
There is a case that the government has indicated to councils that there are potential litigations that could be sort of used to justify reductions in teacher numbers, and we're currently exploring those mitigations and have had discussions with the government. So I wouldn't say at this point in time that it's beyond the realms of possibility that we would be able to reduce numbers without any penalties.
Okay, yeah.
And through yourself, it's also worth saying that some of the mitigations that they've given us include the GEE, and we've had a reduction in GEE of £1 million. And so we will be reducing teachers because of the attainment in the pen. And so we already know that the numbers are down. And so we can't have a conversation with COSLA at this moment in time because of the issues that are happening this week in relation to Effective House, but we're hopeful we will have that discussion in the near future.
I think it's fair to say the government is maintaining a generally hard line with council around teacher numbers, and will only agree to a reduction in teacher numbers in very specific circumstances. Positive, Mr. Robson.
Thank you, so it's on the same subject, and obviously it's useful to know that the mitigations are being looked at, but it would be good if they didn't have to be seen as mitigations, if it was just a case that was being made. And a question that I've got, mainly because I'm obviously not around the COSLA table as such, is, has the case ever been made to Scottish Government about just presenting the case across the country? You know, the Scottish Government don't want to reduce teacher numbers, they want teacher numbers to stay the same. We want our teacher numbers to reduce, but I'm sure that colleagues in other areas want the numbers to rise. And have we done the kind of, if it all came out in the wash scenario, that actually the numbers might not change, it's just that they might be in different parts of the country? I literally don't know if that exercise has been done. It may well have been, but I would just like to ask you.
I'm not aware of the exercise being done, and the government very much looking at it on a council basis. The government general approach is that the way potentially still are looking for every council to sign up to an agreement with them, get their share of the £45.3 million grant for additional teachers. So the government very much looking at it on an individual council by council basis, and any mitigation would be done by the council basis. The collective position of COSLA is it shouldn't be for the government to dictate how many teachers each council employs. The collective position of COSLA is should be given that for the £45.3 million. It should be baselined in the local government settlement, and it should be for councils to determine the appropriate number of teachers that they require. And obviously, at this point in time, the government has the decision. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Mina. Just a question at the start about the turnover targets. Obviously, I think the turnover targets have changed over the number of years. Obviously, we're not achieving the current turnover targets. I'm just wondering, is that going to be identified as, which is obviously good, because it means less people are actually leaving employment within Inverclyde. But are we going to be looking at how we incorporate that turnover target in the future budget? Whether or not that needs to be reviewed, or is it going to be left as a sort of pressure on target? That would be the first question.
Angela,
we are currently looking at the turnover targets just now to see how they are achieved across the 4 services that we have just now. So we haven't finalised that information yet. We haven't made any adjustment for the turnover target within this current budget pressure that we've looked at in the report later on, but it is something that we are trying to identify if there is an issue and where that issue actually lies. So we'll need to come back with the committee with the result for that.
Thank you. And just on appendix.
just while we're on the turnover, the chief executive come in, but it is the case that officers are actively managing vacancies at this point in time to try and, in a sense, get close to the turnover targets as we can, accepting that there are certain vacancies that need to be filled with the priority.
Just through yourself, just to confirm that is the case, directors are actually managing turnover at the directorate level at this moment in time, because we understand we're not going to meet our turnover targets.
Yeah, I think that was it. I recollect that. I think it's maybe at the last P minutes that we discussed it as well. On appendix 10, it's good to see that sort of progress has been made on working savings. And I'm just and I note that there's going to be a consideration of the wider estate presenting members in October, so I look forward to seeing that and engaging with that. Looking at it, we've also got a minus 300,000 on there, which is obviously to remove that as a contingency in case things don't go well. But I'm just wondering, from what I can see here, and there's obviously we're making good progress, it seems, on these items. Is there opportunities to maybe do the Blue Peter on it and then, you know, increase the target in some of these, you know, just to see how we can actually maybe stretch some of the goals. Is that being considered by officers?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Thank you for being there, everyone. The corporate management team are reviewing the work streams, progress and targets on a regular basis. And as a report later on the agenda indicates, I've been working on savings proposals, and part of that consideration is looking to see where there's potential to increase targets. But whilst there may be potential to increase targets, there's also the chance that some of the original targets may not be achieved as well. So we've got to look at it in the round. The one thing that would be very mindful for the corporate management team is not to set targets which are unrealistic, or there is not some backing behind to give us the confidence that we can get there, because we've seen in the past, and other councils that specifically have seen in the past, you know, setting the council a target can get to a budget process, but it comes back and bites you later on. So we want to make sure that they are deliverable, but we are keeping it under review. And you'll recall that from the August Policy and Resources Report, the savings targets, the savings that are being developed by the corporate management team incorporate 300,000 of the existing workstream target around digital and around management structure as well. So we need to make sure we can deliver those. And if we're not going to deliver those, that then will eat into the 300,000 you referred to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Kirsty, Councillor Law.
Thank you, convener. My question's relating to page 13 on the Common Good Fund. It was just to current empty properties that are listed there. Is there any sort of timescale on when the properties in John Street would be marketed, and if we got any interest in anything in the Port Town?
Sure.
Convener, through you. There's a number of properties on John Wood Street which are not lettable at this moment in time, Councillor Law, because of the condition with them. We are working with partners to try and address the fundamental issues that are causing the issues in the properties, and as soon as we've got an update, we'll provide that to committee.
I appreciate it, Stuart. Thank you.
And that's an issue I suppose we discussed with the Port Glasgow Regeneration Forum, and give them the opportunity to maybe sort of get into a bit more of the detail on that as well.
Yeah, just to say that's probably been an agenda for Glasgow to say the Regeneration Forum on Friday.
Okay. Any other questions, colleagues? No, I think it would be permissible if we let this item go without referring to paragraph 4.2. We're advised, I know we've all been advised informally that Alan is looking to retire at a very young age, I have to say. Next year, after nearly 40 years service man and boy to this council. So obviously Alan will be a huge loss to us. It'll be a tough act to follow. We'll also try to get a suitable replacement. There will obviously be opportunity closer to the time to obviously thank Alan for his service, but I think it is important that we recognise that that is on the horizon. Indeed, many of us were hoping it wasn't going to come. It's coming, and obviously I'm sure Alan will support us through this budget process before he leaves us in the professional way. He's always supported us through budget. Okay. Any other questions? No? Right, okay, can you agree with the recommendation?
Agreed.
Fine. Okay, that takes us on to item 2, Porting Resources Capital Budget Council 2024 Capital Capital Program. Alan.
Thank you. Thank you for your words there. This is the first report on the 4-year capital programme that was agreed, which takes us to the end of the Common Council administration, so it covers 2024 to 2028. The main points I would highlight is overall the programme is within the 5% over provision parameter. We reported 6% advancement, or 1.18 million projected advancement this year. And the report includes a remit from the Education Committee requesting a further 22,000 from the capital contingency to increase the capital contribution to the partly branching out project, which was also funded through the Regeneration Capital Fund. I'll take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Any questions, colleagues? No. Okay, so we have it.
Sorry, good. On page 25, capital works and former tied houses. And apologies if this is me misremembering, but I thought we were looking at trying to get to I don't know what's the correct word to say. Transfer. I was going for something that's probably maybe a bit too pejorative, but transfer is good. Thank you very much. These properties. So I was looking at the forecast expend, and it includes a future beyond 27-28, £125,000. And I just wanted to get some information on that, just to see why we think we can spend that amount of money on properties, which we hope to be transferring in the short term.
Yeah.
Through you, convener, we have been attempting to do a housing stock transfer for the former tied houses. We are currently at ballot, and we'll bring a report back to a future meeting. With regards to the financial aspect of it, I would rely on Mr. Pucken to clarify why it's continuing to be shown in the accounts.
Thank you. Sure. The money is in here till it's taken out, and that will be after the decision that councillors will be asked to take. The net bottom line position should be zero if this all works, because obviously the council will no longer get rent income, but it will no longer incur expenditure, including capital expenditure. That's the way the account is set up. So, touching wood, that should all work on the day.
So, capital goes up, but revenue goes down.
Both will go down, and income will go down, and there'll be no net cost to the council is the plan. And Matt Thompson from my services will be the steward service on that at the moment.
So as it stands, essentially this reflects if we were to continue to own the houses, we would have to carry out planned maintenance works for the property.
Yes, so the condition assessment was done at the time, and this just reflects the ongoing programme, but that will go out to the capital programme, but expenditure-wise, also the budget will reduce as well, so there's no net impact on the capital programme as well. It doesn't bring up extra resources, I'm afraid.
Which was it's just a question. Like,
any other questions, colleagues? No, okay, can we agree with the recommendation? Right, that takes us on to item 4, finance services update, and Tracy's going to present that, I think. Tracy?
Thank you, and through you, convener. The Finance Services Update report provides updates on the debt recovery performance in 23-24, non-domestic rates, empty property relief, transitions to universal credit, the Scottish Welfare Fund, the discretionary housing payments and the policy for that, and an update on Social Security Scotland. There is a requirement within the financial regulations for the committee to consider on an annual basis the performance of the council in terms of debt recovery, including the council's debt recovery partner. Council tax collection in 23-24 was 94.7% compared with the Scottish average of 95.5%, placing Inverclyde 24th of the 32 councils. Collection of non-domestic rates increased by 1.57% to 93.84%. Appendix 1 shows the Council's debt recovery partner Alex M. Adamson's performance, and Appendix 2 shows the gross debt as at the 31st of March 2024 being 25.2 million, a bad debt provision of 21.9 million, leaving a net debt of 3.3 million. An update is provided at sections 3.9 to 3.11 about the expenditure on non-domestic rates empty property relief in 23-24 and in 24-25. The report also refers to amendments to the policy agreed in February 24, which will take effect from the 1st of October. Sections 3.12 to 3.17 provides information on user experience with the move to universal credit. Varying experiences are recorded, and services highlight the importance of claimants receiving benefits advice before the move to universal credit to ensure legacy benefits are in order to receive the correct level of transitional protection. The latest published number of households still to migrate to universal credit are also provided. There's a Scottish Welfare Fund update at section 3.18 with expenditure in 24-25 being in line with the government allocation, and that a programme of awareness sessions is underway with frontline practitioners across the Financial Inclusion Partnership and the HSCP services. At section 3.19, the report informs that a review of the discretionary housing payment statutory guidance was carried out and has been published. Section 3.20 explains how eligibility is extended to more claimants and to a greater extent. Officers' assessment is that while the amendments will have a positive impact on the individuals they help, the number of households will be low and therefore the cost to the DHP budget will be minimal. The revised policy, including a summary of amendments, are set out at Appendix 3. An update on the continuing rollout of new benefits delivered by the Scottish Social Security Agency is at sections 321 to 322. The carer support payments will become available in Inverclyde from the 21st of October 24, and the new pension age disability payment will be open to new applicants from April 25. The timescales for the benefits they replace to be transferred over to the agency from the DWP are provided. The report also notes that the launch of the new pension age winter heating payment by Social Security Scotland will be deferred to 25-26. It's recommended that the committee note the annual debt recovery report, the current position of the non-domestic rates empty property relief budget, the feedback from service users and providers regarding the transition to universal credit, the next planned universal credit migration, and the Social Security Scotland update. It's recommended that the committee approve the updated DHP policy changes set out at Appendix 3. Thank you, and I hope to be able to answer your questions.
Thanks very much, Tracy. Any questions, colleagues?
Thank you, Convener. Through you, I have two questions. The first one is about paragraph 3.8, and really I would just appreciate a bit of commentary about this, about the bad debt provision, if that's possible. And the other, my other question, if I can just ask this at the same time, is regards paragraph 3.15, and it's about these migration, benefits migration. And I really want to ask if in this migration, is there a risk that people who might be entitled to the winter fuel payment will miss out in this process? I would like to know that that's, I suppose, not going to, not going to happen. And just that there should be, I think there should be clear communication about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and through you, Convener, I would like to defer, if possible, to either my colleague Angela Edmiston or Alan to answer the question on bad debt provision.
Oh, you want to take that one?
That's absolutely fine. Thank you, Tracy. You would.
Thank you, Alan.
Angela's left. So I think if you look at page 34 of the agenda, appendix 2, what we will see there is by far and away the largest bad debt provision, which we are, from an accounting practice requirements, actually obliged to do. It relates to council tax, and what it means is that every year, through a bad debt policy, a bad debt provision policy that we've got to scrutinised by our auditors, I set aside an allowance for money, which I don't think we will ultimately collect. But it's small, very small percentage wise, but given that we billed over 700 million of council tax since council tax came in, 17 million is a big figure. But it is a very small percentage. So that is the bulk of the bad debt provision we've got. So generally any debt that's more than 12 months old, or in some cases 6 months old, you have to review it to see what's the likelihood of us actually getting the money in. People die, people leave, people go bankrupt. There's all these reasons that we need to have a bad debt provision, and that's reflected in our annual accounts. But the reassurance I can give the committee is our external auditors is one of the key things that they will review every single year. And I can certainly defer to Tracy on the far more difficult question. Same question as you asked.
Just in the bad debt provision, but that's a provision, right? So there's lots of individual debts that lie behind that. Some are a long number of years old. But if people were, in a sense, to resurface at some point, potentially we could seek to recover those debts. So at this point in time, it's a provision, but the likelihood is most of it will be recovered.
Yes, and through you, convener, one of the budget lines in my budget is a recovery of prior year's council tax, and that is, and it's about £350,000 a year. So I would target to like £350,000 a year of previously provided for debt. So I'm eating into that 17,000, but every year something is added in because the debt's another year older. So you'll see that the figure has increased by 700,000 between March 23 and March 24. That is not unusual.
Thank you.
Okay, so second question regarding paragraph 315, Tracy.
So to receive entitlement or to have entitlement to the winter fuel payment, individuals' circumstances are considered as at the 23rd of September. Now, bearing in mind that the payment is targeted at those who are of pension age as at that day, there may be, it's possible that there may be some individuals who just happen to fall into the point at which they are going through the process of moving to universal credit. From information that I read from the equality impact assessment that was carried out by the DWP and published in response to a freedom of information request, less than 5% of individuals who would be eligible for the winter fuel payment would fall into the category of those who are not entitled to a pension credit payment, but could be part of what's known as a mixed age couple, where it's possible that an individual as part of a couple may be entitled to a legacy benefit, which would perhaps fall into the category of being required to be moving over to universal credit. I think, in short, the chances of falling into this scenario are very remote, as in falling into the situation where you would lose out from a winter fuel payment, bearing in mind that there are rules within the pension credit entitlements which automatically allow people to have claims backdated for a period of 3 months. So effectively people have until the end of December to apply for pension credit itself for that to be still to fall into the scope for the payment. In terms of what's being done to prevent people from missing out, the DWP, and it was included within a previous report to committee, the DWP have a whole raft of measures to support people with the move to universal credit through letters and through text messages and eventually home visits if someone is considered to be particularly vulnerable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Tracy. Bonnie, Councillor McGrath.
Thanks, convener. 1.1 on the domestic base. We done the last one, which basically the content for November. So is that going to replace that?
if it becomes empty, then yes, a bit like the other buildings mentioned in this report, but it is for a more limited time now, on the change in policy that was approved by the council. And that is why we have the budget that we have got. I think last year we underspent by about 200,000, but you've got to have that headroom. So if you end up with a major building becoming empty, then there will be a time-limited cost to the council. But we've created a smooth earmark reserve to help smooth these things out, and we've got the budget, and the budget will be reviewed annually just to make sure it's adequate, and it's not excessive either. Because obviously we're hoping that there won't be too many cases where major buildings are going to become empty within in decline, as is the case that you've outlined.
Okay, but I mean that's highlights why we're pressing the Scottish Government in particular to support us to try and find alternative users for both of these buildings. Okay, Elizabeth, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener. My question's in a similar theme to Councillor Armstrong's, but maybe on a kind of more base level actually. Do we know the number of people who in the area are eligible for pension credit and haven't taken it up? And do we have a responsibility and have we got clear comms in terms of ensuring that especially if we've got a 23rd of September deadline for it being quite significant this year, that we're making sure that everybody who's eligible has in fact taken up the credit?
Oh,
sorry, I'd like my light on anyway. I can talk in the generality. This was a question that was asked about this time last year. I think it was Councillor McCluskey that asked it at the time, and you got a report back about what we're doing for the Financial Inclusion Partnership, which Tracy attends. It's sort of lead as the HSCP in that regard. So they're certainly doing all they can. I think the problem is knowing the numbers. You can speculate at the numbers because if you knew who wasn't getting it, then you'd be able to target them, sort of thing. But we had an estimate of the numbers. But if I could pass over to you, Tracy, you'll have more detail around that.
So analysis was carried out by a private firm 2 or 3 years ago, which considered that in Inverclyde there was maybe around about, there could have been around about 100 households who could qualify for pension credit who have not applied. Feedback from Financial Inclusion Partners is more, really indicates that those people who do seek out their services do already either don't qualify for pension credit, or when they carry out a financial assessment of their circumstances, that would be the case, that they just don't qualify. The bar for pension credit is particularly low, and I suppose as an indication is the statistics that we've seen published nationally, where of those households who currently receive the winter heating payment, of which there are in the region of 12 million, once the policy is introduced for this year, only 1.7 million households will qualify. So there is a considerable gap between the number of people who would be eligible just now or last year for the winter heating payment and the number who will eventually receive it. So the bar for pension credit is particularly low, and as I say, the indications from the Financial Inclusion Partnership are that there are very few people. It's very rare for people to be referred to their service and for them to actually qualify for that. The DWP did write to, in fact, the Deputy Prime Minister wrote to the Council just within the last month, asking the Council to be of support to their intention to promote the pension credit and the uptake of the pension credit, and it's something that the Financial Inclusion Partnership are ready to support when material arrives from the DWP to carry out that extra help that we're asked to provide this year.
I was just going to reiterate that letter came in to me, that I gave it to Kate and the Financial Inclusion Partnership to ask them to promote it in the area. and to make sure that people knew if they could apply and to improve the uptake in relation to it. The problem in relation to talking to Kate is that they were waiting for information in relation to the DWP, but it's not too late because my understanding from pension debits that in fact they can backdate it. So the information will go out through the financial inclusion partnerships through a lot of subsector to communities, and will also use your voice in order to communicate that.
But the feeling is we're talking about a relatively small numbers. I mean, the national estimate is somewhere in the region of 800,000. Given that we've got a population of less than 80,000 out of a UK population of 65 million, a proportion of that 800,000 is likely to be pretty low. Yeah. Okay, but obviously the financial inclusion partnership, all the partners will try their best to try and identify those people and get them signed up.
Thanks. No, just to say thank you, it's really helpful, and it's useful to know about the potential to backdate a claim as well. That's really helpful, because I think it might, I mean, I'm sitting there going 23rd of September, oh my goodness, and I was getting a bit kind of hot under the collar. So if, and it's cool, and well, nothing, you know, it's not really about me, you know, in terms of my own circumstances, but I think even just knowing that there's a 3-month period where things can be backdated is really helpful to include in the communications.
Good. Any other questions, colleagues? No, do we agree recommendations? Sounds good. Right, that takes us on to item 5, corporate policy and performance update, July to September 2024. Honor.
Thank you, Convener. Good afternoon. This report covers 4 things. Firstly, on programme for government, doing a trace agreement, it notes the new programme for government to be published earlier this month. Plans to bring a more detailed update on that and applications to us locally the next meeting of this committee. Secondly, we are delighted to be finalists in the COSLA Excellence Awards for this year, and we hope to find that we've been successful at the award ceremony later this week. The third update relates to quality impact assessment that has been published over the period. And the fourth section is around the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network. This is the annual report on our membership. It notes Councillor Cassie's involvement in the Ops Executive Oversight Committee, and paragraphs 318 and 319 detail how we're taking advantage of benefits of membership. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mona. Any questions, colleagues? No? Okay, I'll have to not the report. You sure, Chris? You were looking about 10.
No, I'll just leave
it. Pass on this. Right, any recommendations?
Right.
Thank you, colleagues. Okay, that takes us on to item 6, which is your separate paper, 2024-26 budget. Alan.
Thank you. This report provides an update on the development proposals to address an estimated 700,000 pressure on the indicative 25-26 budget. As previously agreed by committee, the Chief Executive had delegated authority to carry out 7 full, and approximately 6 of these were carried out and have closed, and the results have been analysed. The members' budget working group held its first meeting, and the committee have been asked to support the approval of savings before the Christmas break to optimise the savings in 25-26, and obviously detail of those will be shared with elected members and discussed with elected members in the run-up meeting in December. The report highlights the fiscal challenges also been flagged up by the UK and the Scottish Government, and this highlights the need for the Council to address these emerging pressures in 25-26 on a recurring basis, because I've indicated in this paper, if anything, my medium-term projections could be really optimistic with what's going on at the UK and Scottish level. So it's important that we address new pressures as they emerge now. Because we're already using a fairly significant amount of reserves to balance the budget, and we don't more reserves in to balance the budget would be my advice. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Any questions, comments, colleagues? Sorry,
thanks, Convener. Well, I did highlight that the budget being taken up lack of free reserves, and I'm not surprised that we're now in the position we're in with a shortfall. But Alan, can I just talk about 3.8 now? You have indicated in the past you're concerned about the high reserve that's been used. And given this one, you have no more reserves to put in, in the short term, what's going to be the only way to balance the budget?
Thank you to you, convener. The council has a lot of reserves. Elected members have taken decisions to allocate and earmark a significant volume of those reserves. So at the moment, from what I recall from the accounts, we're about £40 million worth of reserves, and the projection in the report that Angela presented earlier indicated that the free reserves bit, the unallocated bit, was going to fall below 4 million, which is the minimum amount I would recommend. So that leaves 36 million. And one of the commitments that was agreed at the June financial strategy, which I mentioned in this report, is that the corporate management team are going to carry out a review of the reserves, and they will bring back proposals which would potentially free up reserves. Now that might help with this year's shortfall to get the reserves back over 4 million. It may help with other pressures that are emerging through the process. What my professional advice is to elected members is, though, at the moment in this year's budget we're using over £2.6 million worth of reserves, and provisionally budgeted to use 2.9 million of reserves in 25-26. I personally think that's at the upper limit of the use of reserves to balance the day-to-day recurring budget. So if there are new pressures that emerge, then I think the answer to your question, Tommy, is I would make recurring savings to square them off rather than increasing the use of reserves from 2.9 million to 3.6 million, because ultimately at some point you're going to have to address that. And whilst the use of reserves which this council has approved and understandably approved, I would say it's high. It's higher than I would ideally like. It is significantly less proportionally than a number of councils are using. But I'm going to be focused on the Clyde Council's financial position, not the council's financial position. So my advice would be, don't use any more reserves to square your recurring budget, come up with savings, and that's the exercise of the corporate management team. And in the process of finalising over the next 2 or 3 months, the proposals that we discussed at elected member level, and hopefully we'll get decisions before Christmas, which allow savings to be in place by the 1st of April 2025.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan. Another question to Dean, if that's okay. As you know, we are having quite a bit of revenue stuff with reserves at the moment, clothing grant, free school meals, etc., etc. And if we want to continue that, I'm sure your advice would be that needs to come back into the revenue budget rather than be covered by reserves. Do you have off the top of your head, a total of what you're actually covering potential revenue with reserves at the moment? You can provide it's just a question, because we are going to have to look at it.
It's one of the figures I carry around with me. So I would say at this point in time, you're looking at between £750,000 It depends. I could ask the elected members in review, that saving's been taken, and we'll just use the reserves and then the saving will be taken.
Yeah,
and there's other ones where the elected members potentially, if they were, I wouldn't say being honest, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean, if they were reflecting, I think they would say, well, we use reserves, see when we come to actually take the saving. We might want to use reserves for a bit longer time stuff. So the ones you're going to about exit transport, 400,000 a year, winter kitchen, 150,000 a year. Then you've got the anti-poverty ones, which are £200,000 a year. So that's up to 750,000. If you're looking at employability over and above that, where you're taking the same but using reserves for a period of time, if you're looking at grants to voluntary organisations, as an old person like me would still call it, which you're using reserves, then you begin to get into figures that are approaching the 900,000 to £1 million. So you're adding that to your 3 million. So they're the things which ultimately I do elected members are taking decisions to pay savings officers will implement those savings. If elected members are minded to want to continue those, then they'll be added into budget pressures and elected members will need to take those savings.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I think we need to be clear, this report stems from the fact that there's unforeseen pressures happening in the current financial year that we need to address. And officers are going to bring forward savings proposals to help us address them. Well, I think you'll consider those saving proposals. I don't know what they're going to be at this point in time, and we'll obviously need to consider those savings proposals. We've set a 2-year budget that we will obviously have to review the second year budget in the context of any settlement we get from the Scottish Government, inflation, etc., any other factors, the ongoing impact of pay awards, etc. We need to review that. But essentially, we as a council will have, to use the golfing analogy, 3 clubs in our bag. We make cuts, we put council tax up, we can put charges up. That's only 3 clubs we've got. And we've made certain assumptions around all of those in setting a 2-year budget. All of those will be reviewed and can be reviewed in the context of the challenges we face. And as we see in the report, and we are well aware, it's not just councils that are facing these pressures, UK government's facing these pressures and making unpopular decisions. Scottish Government's facing these pressures and making unpopular decisions. And I'm quite confident that when officers bring forward savings proposals in December, some of them will be unpopular decisions that we may have to take. Okay. Anybody else want to come in? No? Okay. We'll have to agree with the recommendation. Right, okay. This is on item 7. Possibly some data new from item 7. Update on Inverclyde anti-poverty initiatives. Tony.
Thank you very much, convener. This report is not the usual kind of progress monitoring visits that we monitoring papers we usually give, just to bring forward proposals. So the report in itself is asking for the committee to approve proposals to extend the Warm Hand of Friendship over the next few years, and also for an additional resource for the City of Edinburgh in order that we can target more young people within areas of most deprivation. Also asking the committee to approve the early termination of the iRise project, which is one of the projects as part of the anti-poverty projects. I've given more detail within the report. It's not that there hasn't had any impact, it's the intended impact of iRise, and we're asking for that to end at the 31st of December. And we've also provided some information on some of the government, Scottish Government funded grants for some of the projects. So happy to take any questions on any aspect of the report.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Any questions, colleagues? Elizabeth?
Thank you. I've got a couple actually on this paper, if that's okay. The first one is about the credit union 5.0. We're a year down the line from the decision to put our credit unions into a kind of regional context, where we've got, rather than having the 2 distinct bodies, that they're now part of an organisation that's operating across the region. I have asked in the past and have had information, so thank you very much for the information that I've been provided to say that this is working well. Generally, that it's been a good move. I think it's important for us to keep an eye on that continuing to be a good move. But I'm just aware of the kind of purpose of credit unions, the ethos behind credit unions, and they've been very, very much embedded in local communities. And I'm wondering, now that we're a year down the line and we're in a regional context, have we been able to maintain local representation within the governance structures, within the kind of operational structures of how that bigger organisation is working to make sure that there's always an Inverclyde voice around the table? That's my first question.
Okay, before I bring Tony in, I think we just need to be careful that credit unions are independent organisations, independent of the councils, and they've got their own governance structures and their legislation and the rules that control them. So the decision for Taylor the Bank and the Port Glasgow credit unions to basically transfer their engagements to the Right Way Credit Union was entirely a decision of the membership of the credit union.
Yeah,
So it was their decision, and we need to just be careful of that. But clearly, it's important that we want to see credit unions flourish, and as a financial inclusion partnership, it's important that we do obviously support them and try to help them to flourish. Tony, do you want to give us an update on where credit unions are at this point in time?
Yeah, I would love to, but I can't. But what I can do is I'll ask Archie Dempster and HSCP to give an update on just an ongoing update on how successful they've been. I take your point, and I'll raise the point, Councillor Robertson, about the local to make sure there's local representation on these credit unions. But if you don't mind, I'll ask him to give you a more detailed update on that.
Can I come back into that? And sorry, this is me lingering on my first question only. But I'm fine. I'm content that this has been a good move. It's been the right thing for our credit unions. I'm aware of the kind of the ethos behind credit. It's purely that governance question that I'm really now asking, and I think it would have been too early to ask that question prior, because there was a transition, there was a move. Now the things are settling down a bit. I'd just like to know if we have an Everglade voice around the governance tables of the regional body.
Well, we can obviously get Tony to ask that question and get it sent an update by email, and obviously in the next version of this report we can get a further update. I mean, I'm just reading what's in the report, telling us that basically the both credit unions will retain their own identity, their own premises, and are obviously benefit from being a member of a wider structure, and that the chief executive of Wrighton Credit Union, which is based in Paisley, I think, is actively involved in the financial inclusion partnership. But I would hope it's been a success and will continue to be successful. Obviously, we can get other information provided on that. Okay, another question, yeah.
Second one is probably more a kind of, well, not as a question. It's about IRIS 4.4. It is disappointing that we're not being able to kind of continue with this in a way, but in another way, I think that there were other organisations out with our structure who might have been better placed to do this from the get-go. And I'm just wondering if that's a ship that has sailed, if there's an opportunity for us to retain the intended outcomes here and actually try and still support more of the people who would have fallen into the eligibility of IRIS, but actually through other organisations that are maybe more specialist in dealing with the clients.
Sorry,
yeah, I suppose and we have detailed in the report that there was some impacts already for the client group, but these were seen to be the same kind of impacts that our existing services would be able to provide. Obviously, IRIS is quite heavily resourced through the anti-poverty funding, but the main part of it was obviously getting people into sustained employment. But a lot of the clients obviously need that longer, more intensive work over a longer period of time in order to get them to that position. So it was felt that the original the project wasn't really meeting its original aims, although there was some impacts there, and I think there is going to be learning from that as well, that we will obviously look to evaluate with the HSCP about certain things that we can do. What would we do differently next time? But it's really over to the committee to decide whether it feels that someone else could do this. But I suppose for purposes of this report is to look at bringing, for the sake of the anti-poverty fund, to bring it back in again to end the project as it stands at the end of December and bring the funding back in to the reserve.
Thanks, Tony. I'll just add to that. As a person who was involved in the creation of IRIS in the beginning, the idea in relation to IRIS, going back to basics, was that it cost a lot of money for someone to go into residential rehab, and could we get someone into employment and help them to stabilise their substance misuse issue. I think what we've learned from the project is that the people are very far away from employment, and that in fact it would, and my idea was always in relation to if it was successful, the Alcohol Drug Partnership, and which are funded in relation to this, could take it over and could fund it on an ongoing basis. I think they've we've tried IRIs, and I think what we need to do, and Ruth is going to lead an evaluation IRIs for us to learn, what did we learn from it? What mistakes did we make, and how do we make sure that we don't do that type of thing again? And that may well be that point that maybe we weren't the best provider, Councillor Robertson. Maybe it should have went to someone else, but that will be picked up in the evaluation. And that evaluation is really important when you think that we've got a number of Scottish Government funded for new projects, and we don't want to make the same mistake again. So just to give you some reassurance, I think there's been lots of discussion at the corporate management team in relation to IRIs, lots of different ways we tried to do it. Lots of interventions to see if we could do it in a different way, and I think it wasn't an easy decision for us to say, well, do you know what, we think it's come to its natural end and we should stop it now. But there will be lessons from it, we will take that forward, and we'll make sure we take that into new projects and new ideas.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Were you in
it?
I'm okay, it's okay to go on to it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say in terms of this, it's important that obviously the evaluation is shared with members as well, whether it be through this committee or through another, the IGV or through better things important to evaluation. You got another question?
Sorry for my inelegant communication skills there. Third question is about whole family support, but not just the project alluded to in the paper, but just the kind of context and the concept of whole family support. I'm kind of hearing from the Scottish Government that they're very keen that we move, and it's a challenge I think across the board to everybody, from transactional work with families to whole family support. And I think in our heart of hearts we would all agree with that as a stated intention. I'm just wondering if we can get a sense beyond individual projects how we feel the health of the organisation as a whole is in terms of delivering on that. I think I feel in my hearts again that we want to be providing whole family support rather than transactional support for families. I understand that we maybe sometimes work in the context of there being pockets of funding that maybe lead us to be more transactional, but I think we maybe need to kind of we always see the bigger picture and move beyond that. So I just wanted a wee health check, maybe not for today, might not be an immediate response now, but I think it's worthwhile going, if we are moving to that and we want to do that, how well do we feel that we can do it?
I'm Chief Executive on that.
Through yourself, there's a lot going on in this area in relation to whole family support. There's obviously the HSCP have got a new front door trying to do prevention to stop people coming into the system on using social work, and that's been going on for about 14 months. We have a lot of work that we're doing in our schools, and we've also got a lot of work that we're doing through the early adopters. I think sitting on Bright Start Future Forum for Scottish Government, for SOS in relation to Scottish Government, I think it's quite a difficult issue. I think I want to do a system change in relation to providing support to families at the earliest opportunity is an aspiration of everyone, but it's not quite as easy as that. And that's why we are keen and we put ourselves forward to be the Port Glasgow Pathfinder project, because we want to test out whether you can do it in one area and whether we can map all of our services around individuals who live in that area, and if we can, and it will be evaluated by university, can we lift it and lay it somewhere else? And so it's quite a tricky issue, but in relation to the Pathfinder, there'll be a project board which will be chaired by Ruth, and there'll be regular reports back, probably through P&R, probably through this report, so you can see where we're getting to in relation to that Pathfinder. But I'm quite hopeful and optimistic, but we're going to try it in one area, bring in all the different strands that the council, the HSCP and education have, and the third sector and the communities, to see if we can come up with something that's quite difficult and different in the Bristol area.
Can I come back in? Is that right? It's just a reportage, I suppose, from just chat out in the world. I know that colleagues in Clackmannanshire are quite well advanced in embedding some of the sort of whole family support side of things, and one of the sort of indicators of that is that 98% of their vulnerable 2-year-olds now got access to early learning and childcare. You know, so the number of young people who could fit into that category versus the uptake, 98% of their young people who are in that vulnerable 2-year-old category are accessing early learning childcare. I don't know what our figures are, but I know that the figures are only just available for the first time. That just seemed like a really demonstrable indicator that what they're doing is pretty good. So just in terms of learning from other areas, I would put a call out for that.
And just for yourself, so we have been linking with Dundee, Glasgow and Client Manager, as they were all pathfinders in relation to the child poverty. We've always done really well in relation. In fact, we were the highest in Scotland. Just thinking this flags beat us now, because we always had a really high number of 2-year-olds. But we can find out that figure. We've collected it in Inverclyde for a number of years, and we submitted it for a children's inspection. So we can pass that to you if that's it.
Thank you.
Okay. That's
Thank you, Stephen. Just on the Warm Hand of Friendship, which I think is a really good project, and I'm interested to see that there's 58 local community organisations actually taking part in this. But looking at it with 9,000 people, which I think is probably more than 10% of the population of them, and we're planning maybe up to 12%, it shows that obviously there is a need, a still need to listen. Obviously, I'm looking at it against anti-poverty initiatives against poverty mitigation, and this obviously probably falls more in the poverty mitigation category. But looking at it as an opportunity to try and get people to the right locations, is that another opportunity to try and sort of signpost people to, if they're going to a local organisation, community organisation, getting this Warm Hand of Friendship, how do we make sure that these conversations, these friendships, are getting people to the right destination, the right location as well? And it might be a bit difficult because there is 58 local communities, which is great, but I'm just how we get this consistent approach to ensuring that when people attend that and get this immediate help, that they're also signposted to long-term help as well, to get either anti-poverty or benefits, universal credit, all that kind of stuff. And that's what was just when I read that, I thought, how do we make sure that people get more help?
Sorry, you want to pick that up?
Yeah, I suppose the funding for these initiatives, for the Warm Hand of Friendship, they all deliver kind of different types of projects. You know, some are to reduce isolation, some are to, well, the original kind of premise around was actually to provide a warm space for people over the winter months. So obviously, so the individual organisations that bid in for the money won't necessarily be providing that signposting either. And I suppose I'm struggling to know at this point how we would make sure that the signposting takes place for every project. But I think because of the nature of it, they're bidding in for different types of funding to do different types of things. And that's been the success of it, that everybody's developing and doing different things within their communities. So I'd need to have a think about how we could provide that signposting as part of the condition for the funding, in terms of, is there something we can give out at that point? But it's going to be a difficult one because everybody's providing a different thing, depending on what they're wanting the money for.
And I acknowledge that. I think that's part of the question, but I just wondered if we're basically getting almost face-to-face contact with 10% of the population. Is this an opportunity to try and see how we can signpost people, we can get that longer term chat and get people in the right places?
Okay, that's something Tony and his team will obviously look at. Any other questions, Paul? No, happy to agree with the recommendation.
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us on to item 8, repopulation. Stuart's going to speak to that. Stuart.
You convener. The report before you provides you with an update in respect of population in Inverclyde, covering the population statistics. People new to Scotland within Inverclyde, reflects on the repopulation priorities and seeks the creation of a community settlement officer post, in part funded by the Scottish Government. As with all matters related to population, there is a lag in the available information. However, the report highlights an ageing population, and that ageing population has increased by 25%, and the younger population has decreased by 38%. Our colleagues in the HSCP have helpfully provided an update in respect to the resettlement programmes, which have We've also reviewed the vision set out previously as part of the LOIP, and the aspirations set out in paragraph 315 remain appropriate from our repopulation agenda. Convener, following our request of Scottish Government to provide financial assistance in addressing depopulation, a number of authorities have been given funding offers to support the recruitment of a community settlement officer, and we're proposing to use the balance of our earmark reserve to fund a 2-year post and to carry out activities related to the items set out in paragraph 3.19. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, colleagues? Yes, there's a comment.
Thank you, Convener. Just on the people new to Scotland, and I'm conscious of the fact there's I noticed a number of resettlement schemes. I'm just wondering, is the student scheme part of that, or is that separate? Because I think we've also had representation from a lot of people who have come in through the student scheme, and probably wasn't planned migration in terms of employee, but the people are here at the moment. And I'm just wondering, is it, and I think this is part of the discussion they reached out to us previously, is there an opportunity for us to actually take account of that and try and encourage that more people to settle in the area that are not part of these other resettlement schemes?
Sure. Through you, Convener. The figures don't take account of the students, Councillor Curley. The reason for that is obviously that's an educational initiative and it's time limited. So they are very transient in that by nature in that perspective. And I've got nothing more to add to that.
I mean, I was going to actually raise that point as well. I mean, obviously the student visas are time limited, but potentially from the students and the families could have the ability to work while they're here, and also potentially will the ability to stay. And there is the issues that have been highlighted to us in our engagement with them around getting sponsorship, employment, etc. So I think it would be helpful if we looked at what more we can do as a council to try and support the African community who have come to Inverclyde, because I think it would certainly benefit our community if we were able to retain a substantial number then here. Please, one of that.
Yeah, through your community, just to say the roof has met with comments from the African community. But we've also had a conversation with the universities, because people are displaced because other local authorities where they would have stayed have obviously they have issues in relation to their hotels, they have issues in relation to their accommodation, they have issues in relation to resettlement as well. So we've had a number of people in the short term migrate in relation to Inverclyde. We have reached out, we have thought about additional support, and there are some unique challenges in there. But I'm happy for them to see and have another conversation with some of the members.
I think it would be useful because I mean the anecdotal evidence is that you're moving out of Inverclyde to other parts of the UK to get work because we can't get sponsorship or employment opportunities that either exist here or close by in Inverclyde. So I think it would be useful if we could, as part of this work, look at supporting this group, not just I suppose the official refugee and migrant programmes that we're talking about supporting. Any other comments? I mean, I think that the funding from the Scottish Government for the resettlement officer is welcome, but it's a relatively modest amount of money, and the scale of the challenge we face is huge. And it's referred to in the report. Part of the reason we established the task force was to address the economic and social challenges we're facing, and one of the biggest social challenges we're facing is a falling population. And if we're going to be able to retain or attract new people into the area, we need to be able to offer employment opportunities. And the task force was set up to try and attract funding to create and develop those employment opportunities, and so far we haven't had any funding directly from the work of the task force from the Scottish Government. So while this is welcome, it's a drop in the ocean as to the, compared to the £70 million we'd actually asked for last August. Now, Mr Arthur, the Minister, who's dealing both with the migration issue, I think, in urban areas, and who's now joining the task force, came along a few weeks ago, and we took him around some places and then tried to show him the sort of challenges we're facing. We had a good discussion with him and good engagement with him. He seemed very supportive, but fundamentally at the end of the day, we need to see money. We know it's not easy in this current financial climate, but we certainly need to see more than £30,000 as a part contribution towards a resettlement officer. Okay, can we agree that? Oh, Councillor Wilson, sorry about that. Missed your hand, Councillor Wilson.
Ross, have you forgotten about me already, convener?
How could I? I do crucially apologise.
Thank you. I go to page 59, 310. The last report I saw was in 23 on Ukrainians, and then we had 211. We're now at 248, which is encouraging that they're coming here and remaining here. But we had 613 individuals since 2015, of which 248 were Ukrainians. Do we have any details on where the 633 have come from, where their backgrounds are, or will that be reported through the HSCP? Thank you.
There's very detailed work in relation to this. The reason I know is because I summarised it all out in this report. There's because it's easy. There's small numbers from Pacific groups, and there's things that happened over a specific period of time. Happy with Craig's on the call. Happy to ask Kate or colleagues from the HSCP if they could do maybe a briefing or a more detailed piece of work for elected members to get an idea or a flavour of what's happened over a longer period of time, maybe for some of the new elected members.
Okay,
thank you. Yeah, okay with that.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, can we agree on recommendation? Okay, that takes us on to item 9, complaint handling annual report, 1st of April 2023 to 31st March 2024. Carol's going to speak to that report. You're on mute, Carol, we're not hearing you. Well, you don't appear to be on mute, maybe your microphone's turned down.
Now?
Yep.
Yeah.
You've just blown our eardrums there, Carol. You maybe want to touch it down a wee bit. Nope, not hearing you now. You need to put your headphones back on.
Again, you didn't have them on.
Can we hear audio now?
Yes.
Can hear you now, yeah.
Can we hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. There's 6 seconds, all with the same labelling. I'm sorry. I'll start the report again through you, convener. Covering report summarising complaint handling performance covering the period from the 1st of April 2023 to the 1st of March, the 31st of March 2024. The report overall covers the level of complaints that we've received in the period, which was 286 complaints, of which we closed 272 of those. We're reporting a lower number of complaints on the collective performance, and it should be noted that there was a slight increase in the complaints received by the HSDP and Inverclyde Leisure. Within the report of the appendix, section 3.6 to 3.7 provides a breakdown of the complaints that were received by service areas. These are noted as I would have expected in a normalised distribution. Within section 3.8 to 3.9 of the report, outcomes of complaint handling investigations are summarised and the 4 possible outcomes that are achievable in there. Timescales to resolve complaints are summarised in section 3.10 to 3.18. This is probably the main area of focus within the complaint where opportunities exist to improve our performance overall. The collective performance at stage 1 of our complaints shows that we resolved our complaints within 4.43 days, which is 84.7% of complaints being closed within 5 days of the standard timescale expected to conclude that complaint. Stage 2 of the complaints showed that we closed those complaints within 21.5 days, which was 59.5% of the percentage within 20 days. And our escalated performance at stage 2, where complaints are escalated into stage 2 of the procedure, finished up at 17.4 days, which is 66.7% of those complaints handled within 20 days. The collective performance has shown an impact from the overarching HSCP's performance, which has showed strain throughout the year. And it is noted that improvements have been made within this particular area of performance, but not sufficiently enough to not impact the overarching council performance. A service improvement action plan has been taken by the HSCP to focus on that particular area of performance in the coming periods. To put that into context, Inverclyde Council's performance, excluding all the other areas that feed into that, had its stage 1 complaints at 4.6 days, its stage 2 complaints at 15.6 days, and its escalated complaints showed a slight increase above the 20 days at 21.5 days. If we take the HSCP's performance in isolation, their stage 1 complaints finished up at 4.7 days of the average 5-day timescale, and their stage 2 performance finished at 32.1 days. Most of this is attributable to a lot of the complexity that's encountered in those particular complaints, but I thought that backdrop would be useful performance to share with you today. In terms of then the Council's satisfaction survey, which is covered in the covering report at 4.8, we intend to be implementing this metric during the course of 2025, once we've implemented our new complaint handling system, which is set to go live later in this year. Within 4.9 of the report, the service improvements and learnings have been evident throughout the year, and one of the key actions to note was the Council's reorganisation over the course of the year to centralise its resources and expertise to handle complaints for the HSCP and the Council within the Information Governance team. Handing over then, it would be recommended that the committee notes the performance provided within the content of the report and approves the publication of the report within the Council's website. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this report.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Any questions, colleagues? Elizabeth, Councillor Robertson?
Thanks. Just one very nosy question from me, Convener. I'm going to ask everybody to look at page 5.3 of the report, which according to the index is page 16 of the report, but there are page numbers. And it's looking at the learning from complaints, which says that any learning that comes from complaints is shared with the corporate management team and then posted on the council's website. I'm wondering if we could maybe get a link to where that is on the council's website. I'm not really going to kind of search for it, and I'm just wondering if that could be made available to us as well. That's okay.
Carol, can you action that?
Yeah, through you. Yes, I can action that. That's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, colleagues? No, I'm happy to agree with the report. Okay, thank you. Right, moving on to item 10, Freedom of Information Annual Report 2023. Again, Carol.
Yeah, thank you, through your convener. So this report covers the annual performance for the Council's Freedom of Information performance covering the period 2023. We've handled a total of 1,151 requests under the FOI regime, 99 of those requests under the environmental information requests, and we've also handled within the information side of our process 132 subject access requests. Within the report, you will note that there is an update covering our performance in terms of our timescale management of answering our responses. 94% of those were handled within the statutory timescale, with 6% of them falling into either not being responded or a failure to respond to the request. This is an improvement in comparison to the period last year, where our performance was under an improving performance, been one of the best performances we've seen to date. In terms of the requests and the sources of where we've seen these come from, which is normally of interest, this is covered in section 2 of the report. We've seen 36.6% of requests being made by individuals, 15% have come from parliamentary assistants, and 12.3% of requests have been made by media or newspaper sources. Additionally, there was 11.62% of requests made under a category of others where it was unknown the source of where those requests were made from. In terms of the updates, we've been providing quarterly updates to our corporate management team on the performance, keeping them cited and breasted on the timescale management and other matters that are of interest. With under 4.11 of the report, the internal audit action plan has been noted, and we are behind with completion of some of the green actions, and we've given an update within the report to show those that will be completed and concluded by the end of the year, where there is 2 actions pending in respect of that. That probably covers the main highlights I'd like to offer today on the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I would ask that we note the content of the report and approve the publication of the annual performance on the Council's website.
Okay, thank you, Cara. Any questions, colleagues? Councillor Cowler?
Thank you. Just regarding page 105 and the table under section 3, source of requests, it's got employee down as 0.0007%. I think that might be a bit of a typo. I think for percentage wise, I think it probably should be 0.07%.
Fine, that's fine. I can take a wee look at that. Thank you for highlighting that.
I was thinking you wanted it out yourself.
He doesn't know what He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Okay, any other questions, colleagues? No, we're happy to agree recommendations.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Right, on to item 11, OD policy and communication policy updates. Lorna.
Thank you, Convener. As you are aware from what we provided previous committee, we are going through a process of updating a number of policies across the council, and we're looking for agreement today in terms of updates to 3 policies. Appendix 1 gives a breakdown of the key changes. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Lorna. Any questions, colleagues? No, we're happy to approve.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.